the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Mondli Gungubele, has raised concerns over the provisional liquidation of the South African Post Office. He has requested that the board and management of SAPO provide him with the information of the circumstances that led to this development, the steps taken by the board to tackle the issue, and the measures in place that SAPO intends to implement to resolve it promptly. For more on this, we are joined by Mohlopi Mapulane, the Deputy Director at the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. Very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time. We know that Minister Mondli Gungubele has expressed some concern over the provisional liquidation of SA Post Office and now requested a detailed account of the circumstances which led to the development. How is your department handling this matter?
Thank you very much, Mpo. Thanks for having me. And good afternoon to our viewers. Just a bit of correction, Mpo. My name is, my designation is the Deputy Minister of the department, not the Deputy Director. Mpo, if I may just offer some brief comments. We are worried as a ministry about the developments that are taking place at the South African Post Office. The Minister has requested a detailed briefing around the developments that has resulted in the liquidation of the entity, and the Minister is expecting that report as soon as possible.
So what steps have been taken, Deputy Minister, to ensure the continuous provision of social services, timely grant payments, efficient workforce, and perhaps a level of harmonious negotiations with SAPO's creditors in order to get a more favorable outcome? Because, I mean, as you and I speak, of course, a creditor of the SA Post Office emerged successful in the High Court bid to have the state-owned entity placed under provisional liquidation. I also understand that it's usually hard for companies to be rehabilitated and resume trading at this juncture.
We're working with the board and management of the post office to resolve this liquidation. Our information is that the current creditor who has taken SAPO to court and obtained a default judgment and a liquidation is no longer in arrears. So meaning that the post office has settled all the outstanding debts with this particular creditor. So what is outstanding is for the post office to go to court and set aside this court order and the liquidation. We are informed that there are discussions happening between the management and the appointed liquidator by court. And as things stand, it looks like the matter will be resolved as soon as possible. But of course, pending those negotiations.
Yeah.
But we have been assured that as we stand, there is no outstanding debt that is being owed to this creditor.
Deputy Minister, you're speaking about one creditor, and a lot has been said about the SA Post Office's financial situation, arguably being beyond redemption, owing creditors at least 4.4 billion rand. The situation is not an overnight development. We know that this has been happening over the past 15 years, that the SOE has recorded consecutive financial losses and continued to operate without paying its bills. I mean, surely the latest developments don't come as a surprise. The writing has been on the wall regarding the SA Post Office's decline. And you mentioned one creditor. There are more. There are others.
Well, Mpo, we have always been frank with the South African public about the current challenges that are faced at the South African Post Office. When we got appointed in 2021 in August, we engaged extensively with the post office, and we got to be exposed to the challenges, the crisis that actually the post office has been facing. And we have instructed them to come up with a strategy, which they subsequently did, which has been termed the Post Office of Tomorrow, through which we intend to turn around the post office. Now, these current difficulties are not, they come from far. In fact, if you look at the financial statements of the South African Post Office. The decline started in 2006 as a result of a number of things, as a result of the introduction of new technology and all of that. So they started losing market share. But what actually crippled them was the strike in 2014. Almost 5 months of industrial action at the post office, from which they have not yet recovered. So ever since, the market share has been declining because of the changing nature of the market. As you know, that the post office was established as an entity to deliver letter post. And ever since introduction of the internet, technology, the market has changed completely. So they have been struggling over a period of time to adjust to the changed market conditions. Only now that we're beginning to rethink the future role of the post office through the post office of tomorrow. Yes, indeed, this is not the only creditor. There are a number of creditors. As you say, there is more than 4 billion that is owed to the creditors. But ourselves and them were working on an approach of settling all this debt and reorientating and repositioning the post office so that it can be able to regain the market share that it has lost over a period of time. So through this post office of tomorrow, we intend to reposition it as a logistics hub to be able to play in the e-commerce space. We want to reposition the post office as an authentication authority, especially during this period of digital identity. We want to turn the post office, especially the branches in the rural areas, into business hubs. So this turnaround that we're working on is not going to realize income and revenue in the short term. We know that we're in for the long haul, but of course, working with National Treasury has recently recapitalized the post office and advanced about 2.4 billion, through which we want to implement the strategy, and part of it will have to settle the outstanding liabilities and renegotiate new terms with those creditors that we're owing.
In terms of settling the outstanding liabilities, I mean, how much of that 2.4 billion rand will go towards the post office of tomorrow, the strategy that you speak of? Is it enough?
It is not enough. Certainly it's not enough, Mpho, but it's something that we can work with. It's something that we can, not all of it is going to be used to settle the outstanding creditors, of course. Part of it will be used for partial settlement of all the liabilities, and we expect the entity to enter into negotiations with all other creditors to enter into new arrangement to settle the outstanding liabilities over a period of time whilst we are funding the strategy. And through the strategy, we hope to get some more revenue to get the business afloat so that it can continue to operate as a going concern.
Do you think that perhaps you're intervening a little too late at liquidation point, which is usually the last resort and follows after a failed business rescue process? I do understand that the High Court has not placed the SA Post Office under final liquidation because it wants all the affected parties, management, workers, creditors and so forth to put forward their reasons why the court should not order the final liquidation of the SOE. Do you think that perhaps this process could have happened sooner? I know that attempts to get money from National Treasury failed in the past before the 2.4 billion rand in February.
Well, we don't think that it's a little too late. We have been working with them since August of 2021. When we requested them to develop the strategy, we worked with them to finally approve, then we got cabinet approval of the strategy. I must say that this recent development about the liquidation has really come as a surprise to us, because we thought that the post office has been engaging with all the creditors, and they are aware of the situations and the plans that we've put in place. I am told by the post office that in fact they did not get the notice of this application to court. So, but it's a matter that they are dealing with. It should not have happened. They should have defended the action and explained to the court of the actions that were put in place to address all the outstanding creditors. As I'm saying, our information is that this specific liquidator, not the liquidator, I'm sorry, this specific creditor was paid in full.
I understand that the creditor is one that where the properties were being leased, the various post office, and had not been paid over a couple of months or years, and was now at a point where they had no option but to take this kind of action. That's my understanding.
Yes, that's the information that this creditor is a landlord. We are leasing office space from this particular creditor. There was some outstanding amount which we are told is not that significant. It's less than 1 million, and it has since been settled. So it should not have been reached this point. Of course, that there are other creditors who are also knocking on the door of the post office, and for which we want to acknowledge that indeed the post office is owing a lot of people a lot of money, but we are working on a plan to make sure that all of them, eventually their debt will be settled. Because if the post office were to go into liquidation now, some of the creditors will not even receive their money because there wouldn't be enough. So we want to keep the entity in operation as a going concern, and we want to turn it around. And we are really pleading with all the creditors that let's allow this process of the implementation of the post office of tomorrow to kick in. The money that we have received from National Treasury, part of it will be utilized to settle these liabilities. The rest of the outstanding, we will work through with them until we completely stabilize the entity.
I mean, you've been speaking quite a bit about the post office of tomorrow, the new strategy, and of course it speaks to observing how postal companies are doing globally. There's a major shift in consumer patterns. They really, post offices are struggling to reinvent their operations, in which consumers are now relying more on electronic methods of communications than they do mail. Looking at the staff that's currently at the SA Post Office, I mean, there's been a lot of struggles also to fulfill, the SA Post Office struggling to fulfill its basic function of even delivering mail on time and to the right address. And looking at the staff component and the transformation that needs to happen, isn't there a gap of skills perhaps? Is there room to develop the staff? How are you going to work on that aspect of the business?
Certainly there is a room to retrain and reskill some of the staff members who are there. We are working with the unions around this. But also one of the issues that we have raised as contributing towards the situation where we are is that a significant amount of the revenue of the post office, my apologies for that. A significant portion of the income is going towards paying salaries, over 60% of that. And this is a situation that would like it to be attended to. There's been a process that has been introduced by the post office of voluntary severance packages, which have not really intervened significantly to arrest the situation of the salaries, of the cost of salaries that we are having there. So we are working on that as well. But yes, you are right. The market has changed significantly. And the post office has been struggling to reposition itself to the changed market conditions. Hence, we have this post office of tomorrow. Because in this post office of tomorrow, we're emphasizing partnership. That the post office can serve as a logistics hub work with because the parcel industry is growing, as you know, and companies like, I don't want to mention those companies' name, they are doing very well in the market, in the e-commerce. And that's why we say we want to position the post office to play in that market of e-commerce, to partner with other companies. We've got an expansive network of branches, which any other postal operator in this country does not have. So we must work on that competitive advantage, get into partnership with some of the market players in the postal sector to be able to reposition the post office to deliver the services.
Thank you so much for your time. We are going to have to leave it there for now. Mohlopi Mapulane, the Deputy Minister in the Department of Communications.